Okay, so we will open the select board meeting. So welcome to the July 26, 2021 select board meeting. In accordance with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted by the state of emergency signed into law by Governor Baker, tonight's select board meeting will be conducted remotely via Zoom and will not be open to the public for physical attendance. The meeting is being recorded, live streamed and cable broadcast by the Easton Community Access Television, which is Comcast 98 and Verizon 23, and on ECAT's website at www.eastoncat.org. This meeting is closed captioned for the hearing impaired. If you're watching on your computer, you'll see a CC button on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching at home and you have a question or a comment, you can email Michael Blanchard at mblanchard@easton.ma.us or pose your question on the Q&A feature of the Zoom portal. Please remember to include your name and street address for our minutes. At this time, I'd like to ask each select board member to state their name to ensure we have a quorum.
Craig Barger.
Mark Lamb.
Amy Stebbins.
Jennifer Stacy.
And I'm Dottie Fulgenetti. So welcome everyone. Okay, let me see where we are. So the first thing that we have is the Purple Heart Day proclamation. So Corey is not going to be, is here. Do you want to move Corey over?
Hey, everybody.
How you doing?
Hey, Corey, how are you tonight?
Good evening. Doing well, thanks. How are you?
Great. So I want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for continuing to really support the Purple Heart Day. I didn't know if you wanted to give us a little background on that, and then I had asked Jamie Stebbins if he'd like to read the proclamation.
Great. Thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Corey Ahonen. I serve as the Veteran Service Officer, my position Deputy Director, Health and Community Services. The Purple Heart Medal is presented to service members who have been wounded or killed as a direct result of enemy action while serving in the U.S. military. It is also presented to family members of those killed in action. And annually, Purple Heart Day occurs on August 7th. This year, that falls on a Saturday, so we thought it would be appropriate to observe this day on Friday, August 6th at 9 a.m. at the town office's flagpole, where we'll do a brief ceremony, some guest speakers, read this proclamation that you all will be reaffirming tonight, hopefully, and we will raise the Purple Heart flag. And it just kind of serves as a good eye-opener to what exactly it means to be awarded the Purple Heart. We have a great guest speaker this year from the Military Order of the Purple Heart. He's a local veteran and Purple Heart recipient, so I think it'll be a great event, pretty similar to years past. So I am honored to be here tonight to reaffirm this proclamation. I thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Corey. Jamie, if you'd like to read the proclamation.
Yes, thank you. The Town of Easton Proclamation, Purple Heart Town, August 7th, 2021. Whereas the people of the town of Easton have great admiration and the utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served their country and this community in the armed forces for the good of all. And whereas contributions and sacrifices of the men and women from Easton who served in harm's way in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedom and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas citizens of our community have been killed in action while serving in the armed forces and have been posthumously awarded the Purple Heart for their ultimate sacrifice. And whereas citizens of our community have been awarded the Purple Heart for their bodily sacrifice of being wounded in action while engaged in combat. And whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest American military decoration in present use and was created as the badge of military merit on August 7th, 1782 in Newburgh, New York by General George Washington. Initially, it was made of purple cloth, shaped as a heart with the word merit sewn upon it. And whereas the heritage it presents is sacred to those who know the price paid to wear the Purple Heart. And whereas August 7th is nationally recognized as Purple Heart Appreciation Day. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed, we, the Easton Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the town of Easton, go on record to hereby proclaim Easton, Massachusetts a Purple Heart Town, honoring the service and sacrifice of our nation's men and women in uniform that were wounded or killed by the enemy while serving to protect the freedoms enjoyed by all Americans. Also, be it proclaimed, we, the town of Easton, will recognize August 7th annually as Purple Heart Day and urge the people and organizations of Easton to display the American flag as well as other public expressions of recognition of our Purple Heart recipients. And Daddy, I'd just like to add thanks to Corey, both for being here and for organizing the observance on August 6th. And just to reiterate to folks, we're observing it on the 6th, which is a Friday, given that the 7th falls on a Saturday this year. So highly encourage anybody that can come out. I know Corey will do another exemplary job, and certainly the speaker will be well worth everybody's time to just take a moment to pause and to reflect upon those who have both paid the ultimate sacrifice or wounded in protecting our freedoms. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Craig, did you have anything you wanted to add? Any comments?
No, I just every year I'm pleased to be able to represent the members of this community and thank Corey for his ongoing work with the veterans in this town.
Mark?
Yes, thank you, Corey. You go above and beyond. This community is exceptionally lucky to have you. Purple Heart Day, the ceremony that you put out there is, I've been there a couple times and hope I'll be able to go there this year. It's an incredibly humbling event, like, you know, a moving event where you sit back and you hear from these people. You hear from either the Purple Heart recipient or a widow or a family member, and it's very humbling, and everybody should, if they can, take it in at least once in a while, or at least once in their life.
And Jen?
Just a quick thank you to Corey. Again, you do such a fantastic job of honoring those who served and being a fantastic resource. And this is just another display of really Easton's values coming full front in a really important way. So thank you.
And I'll add, you know, also, Corey, you've done such an amazing job for our local veterans and their families, and it's much appreciated. I'm grateful that we have a veteran on our board. Before Chuck was the veteran, and when he retired, Jamie stepped in. So I think it gives another, just more of a personalization to our board to have a veteran. And I appreciate Jamie reading that. I know that sometimes veterans feel uncomfortable with the attention, and, you know, humble was mentioned several times during this conversation. And it's true. Those that served, when they do talk about their service, they are very humble and very oftentimes feel uncomfortable with the attention on them. So we're grateful that we have this opportunity to show our appreciation and our reflection on their service. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Corey.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So next we have some more good news. We've received a couple of grants, the Green Communities and the Mass Trails Grant Awards. Easton has been awarded $91,741 for a Green Communities grant through a competitive process through the Department of Energy Resources, otherwise known as DOER. The grant will fund $56,494 for LED lighting at the Police and Fire Station number 1 and $35,247 for LED lighting at Fire Station number 3. The Green Communities Division provides grants, technical assistance, and local support to help municipalities reduce energy use and costs by implementing clean energy projects in municipal buildings, facilities, and schools. And it's worth noting that Easton was an early adopter of the Green Communities program and has been awarded over $1 million since the year 2000, since 2010, I'm sorry. And Easton was also awarded a $6,000 grant through the Mass Trails Grant Program administered by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. This grant supports creating a 1.5 to 2.5 mile trail loop in the Pequannock Conservation Management Area with the trailhead at the Edwin Keach Recreational Fields. The work will be coordinated by Chris Patrick and Easton Boy Scout Owen Eldridge. Mass Trails provides matching grants to communities public entities, and nonprofit organizations to design, create, and maintain the diverse network of trails, systems, and trail experiences used and enjoyed by Massachusetts residents and visitors. Applications are accepted annually for a variety of well-planned trail projects benefiting communities across the state. So it's really exciting to have both of those. Thank you to our staff. We don't have official grant writers. Our staff write their own grants. So I think these probably both went through the planning department, right, Connor?
The trail work program did. The Green Communities grants are primarily administered by DPW, but we all
okay.
Together.
Okay, terrific. And just while I'm thinking about the trails, just to put out there, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but on the town's website, there are maps of all of the trails. So if you're looking for places to explore, Jen, you probably know more about it than I do, because I know that you go out with your family on a lot of these trails.
We're just so lucky to have so many amazing outdoor resources in this community. And it was actually a huge part of why our family wanted to live in Easton when we made this decision years ago. You know, it's amazing how rich our trail network is and how well maintained they are. So for biking, for walking, hiking, bird watching, I mean, everything. So really incredible.
Terrific. Any other comments or questions on those?
I have a quick question on the lighting. Connor, do you know what we don't have a payback because we got awarded a grant, but what kind of utility dollar savings are there associated with that? Because I know the LED projects are huge.
That is a great question. I don't actually have the answer off the top of my head. Dave Field is still here. If he does, he is free to hop in and save me. I apologize. I don't know the exact payback.
Oh no, I know it's probably a really impressive number, and you guys should be shouting from the rooftops how much these LED conversions are saving, because it's greenhouse gas reduction. There's a utility savings. It's a really, really smart thing, and the fact that you're getting grant money for it is just awesome.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm pulling up the numbers now. It is didn't anticipate that question, but shame on me. We're going to be saving 94,000 kilowatt hours annually.
That's terrific. Awesome. Well, thank you, David. All right. Well, if there's no other comments on questions, we're going to move on to the one-day liquor licenses. So the first one is applicant Carolyn Cole on behalf of the Easton Shoveltown Cultural District. She's applied for a one-day beer and wine liquor license for the Legacy 2021 Summer Concert Series on July 29th, August 5th, August 19th, and August 29th at Oaks Ames Memorial Hall, 3 Barrow Street, Easton, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. An Easton Police detail is not required for this event. And this is really a great concert venue outside of Oaks Ames Hall. I saw some pictures on social media about it, and really great performers, and no cost to the public. So beer and wine is available for purchase, and snacks probably. So if somebody would like to make a motion to award this one-day liquor license.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
That's Barger and Lamb.
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Casey, yes.
And full Janetti, yes. Terrific. The next one is applicant Meredith Bonney of Rosemary Fresh on behalf of the Friends of the Library, has applied for a one-day beer and wine license in the library for the literary brunch at Our Table event to be held on August 15th, 2021 at the Queesit House, 51 Main Street, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. An Easton Police detail is not required for this event either. So if somebody would like to make a motion to award this license.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
So it's Barger and Lamb.
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Casey, yes.
And full Janetti, yes. And then the third is applicant Letitia Scott of Alluring Beauty LLC has applied for a one-day beer and wine liquor license for the Boss Up Day Women's Empowerment Workshop to be held on August 15th at Borderland State Park, 259 Massapog Ave, Easton, from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. An Easton police detail is not required for this event. And there's a note, the select board previously approved a license for this event. However, the applicant had requested a date change, which requires the issuance of a new license. So if I could get a motion to accept, I'm sorry, to award this license.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
Bodger and Lamb.
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Stacy, yes.
And Full Janetti, yes. Thank you. Okay, next is a Department of Public Works update, the scope and schedule of the Northeastern Village Main Street Streetscape project. And he's back.
Good evening. Connor, did you want to give a brief overview, or do you want me to do that? I don't mind either way.
Sure. So attached to the board's packet is a rendering that DPW Director Field, either Dave, you're going to screen share it or?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so we'll share with the board and the public at home. So since the last presentation made to the board, the project scope has been adjusted to extend the limits of the sidewalk work and paving slightly farther eastward down Main Street that Dave's going to be showing us. And wayfinding and signage, that was a key piece of feedback we heard from business groups down there. I believe that the EDC worked on. That'll be incorporated into the project as well. There will be 2 new raised crosswalks at Main near Sullivan and across the Farmer's Daughter, and decorative sidewalks will also be included. You can see them here at Main Mechanic and Williams. It's an area of town the board frequently receives pedestrian concerns and complaints regarding safety. Sidewalk expansion work has already begun using our existing sidewalk contractors, and we'll be adding 4 new parking spots on the eastern limit of the Main Street project for a net increase of 2, making up for 2 of the spaces that there's now expanded sidewalk at. However, the easements necessary from private party were not granted timely, so we will not be able to complete the limited undergrounding that we had been considering because to continue to wait would have delayed the other beneficial aspects of this project. MassWorks has reviewed that and approved that shift. So DPW is going to be working with existing contractors that we already have contracts with through Sursage, so this can get moving quick. And Dave, you want to add anything to kind of what the layout is, what this plan represents, and what the calendar looks like?
Sure. So as everyone might know, we've already done a little expansion work out there previously prior to April. Expanded the sidewalk in front of the Farmer's Daughter. And then actually right now, the contractor is on Main Street, is torn up some of the sidewalk in anticipation of curb line changes that Connor mentioned. We'll be changing the curb line at Williams and Main Street, and we'll be changing the curb line in front of the Immaculate Conception Church to kick the traffic over and allow for on-street parking on that north side of the road on the east part of the project. So contractors out there now, the curb line changes and new sidewalk pours, which should be done in 2 to 3 weeks. We'll then come in with our paving contractor, PJ Keating, and we'll mill the entire roadway and then pave it. And then the next step will be installing the raised crosswalks in front of Bill's Pizza and in front of the Farmer's Daughter. And then the final stage will be line striping and installation of the decorative crosswalk at Sullivan, at the raised crosswalks, and at William Street. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about the timing or anything else we're doing out here.
Craig?
Yeah, David, just a question relative to the easements. Is that money still available? Should that process come to fruition? Has MassWorks approved that holding off that money, or do we lose that money as a result of we've been unable to finalize?
Yeah, unfortunately, this has been since 2018. I don't think that's an option anymore. We had to move on and get at least the streetscape portion of this done. And now that we're doing the streetscape, we can't go back in and do undergrounding because that would be a reverse order. We're going to make those final improvements. So I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately, for the undergrounding, but three-phase power is available to all these properties, which was one of the goals of the undergrounding at the initial onset. But we've worked with National Grid, and you know, if we have a way we can get three-phase power to all these properties right now without the undergrounding portion, and we're going to proceed with the streetscape at this time.
Great. Thank you, David.
Mark?
Yeah, I just quick question, Dave. I recall at some point there was a mention of the street lighting to continue down in front of the church. You know, that nice, the black, it looks like Norman Rockwell stuff. Is that going to continue?
So that was only going to continue if we took out the utility poles in that section from William Street down to the church. We were going to replace those. That the street lights that were on the poles would have to be removed. We just don't have a lot of real estate there. So we're not including that at this time. It would only be one or two poles. But again, if we have ability to do that, we will, but I don't believe we do.
Okay. Thank you.
Jamie?
Dave, are there any concerns that we've had that are not being addressed by the work that we're doing? Anything, you know, that we've made an effort here to address everyone's concerns from a safety standpoint, any that we weren't quite able to complete?
No, so I think, you know, just a couple of the goals here were to really make this a inviting downtown that clearly cues motorists to know you're in a downtown area. So I think we're really going to hit that with the raised crosswalks, the high visibility crosswalk treatments that we're using, and also the wayfinding signage. So we'll be able to install wayfinding signage in advance of the downtown. That'll be decorative and welcoming in nature, but it's also going to be another visual cue for motorists. So I think we're hitting pretty much everything we need to hit at this time. And again, the wayfinding is going to be a bigger benefit than just this little area. It's going to benefit the whole town, but this is going to start us in the right direction.
And just can you explain wayfinding a little bit?
Yeah, so wayfinding signage, it's basically a slate of signage. We'll have a menu of signs that will take care of like place signage, like police stations, fire stations, library. You know, it's going to give some wayfinding signage to let people know where those things are. There'll be welcome to Easton signs that we could put at the borders. Welcome to Northeastern Village. We could put in, you know, on either side of the downtown area. Parking signage, and any other type of place signage we'd like to incorporate throughout town.
Thank you very much.
And specifically, the parking was a big question when we started this. A lot of people don't realize there's municipal parking behind the Children's Museum, and it doesn't really stand out on the signage that we have. So these signs will direct people, you know, when you're coming down and you're coming to dinner, here's more places that you can park, and it'll be easier to find when you're down there.
That's the goal.
Jen?
So just to be clear, this is the last kind of steps of the process for the street work and working down in this part of the town as far as paving goes and sidewalk efforts go.
Yeah, we're actually just finishing up on Pond Street now, so that's going to tie right into this. It's the same contractor. It's going to wrap right around, come right down Main Street. And I don't have any other plans at this point for anything else in the downtown area at this time.
Awesome. Okay, no, it's so awesome to see the crosswalks and the sidewalk changes and whatnot. That especially that corner of Williams and Main, that sidewalk is right in my neighborhood, and I totally understand the need for maybe increased safety there. So this is a huge value add for the entire area. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do get a lot of you know, comments and concerns about people speeding in that area. And, you know, oftentimes people will ask, can we put speed bumps in? And you can't really put speed bumps on main roads like that, but to be able to raise the crosswalks a little bit, these traffic calming measures are cues to the traffic to go slower. The bump outs on the sidewalks also are supposed to have that same thing, but you know, sometimes you're taking your life in your hands trying to get out of your car when some of the cars drive by quickly. So I think between the signage and these new enhancements down there, I think it will really do a lot to help people realize you're coming into a dense area. There's a lot of people walking around, and the speed limit drops pretty quickly. So people do have to slow down when they go into that area. So thank you so much, David. You've been reinventing this project and zigging and zagging as we've gone through it, and you've done a great job with it, you and your engineering team and the partners that you're working with. So we really appreciate that. It's going to look great down there.
Thank you.
Nadia, if I could just add one last piece, I think Dave, you might have been going here to, on the wayfinding. So, and actually one other thing I clarified, Dave, you said high visibility for crosswalks, but for anyone at home, just to make sure that we're clear, we know it's a historic district. We'll make sure that they're historically appropriate. We're not talking about flashy yellow caution paint on the crosswalk. They would look closer to the brick as it was originally constructed. That type of aesthetic, yes.
Correct. It's a brick treatment. It's the change in material is gonna be where the visibility comes in. But it will be a brick treatment. It won't be real brick. It's gonna be a surface applied treatment to the roadway. Because of the issues we've had with our previous crosswalk, we pivoted and gone with another style that I think people will like.
And then the other piece for the board to think about, Dave brought up a great point, but so wayfinding, this will be kind of the first step. This is something Dave has brought up a few times over the years, that the goal is to kind of make uniform signage aesthetics throughout town so people have a sense of place. So much like for the town offices CPA project, the designer selection team had representation from various key stakeholders from CPA and Historic Commission. Dave suggested, and I think it's a good idea, that the board consider a group of existing board and committee stakeholders that have a really good connection to town and a good sense of the aesthetic of town, be a kind of working group that can look at various design iterations of a wayfinding signage for feedback and buy-in on that, rather than us just give it to an engineering company to do.
Yes, please.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we may bring something like that back for your next meeting then.
Terrific. Yeah, I think a standardized approach to that makes a lot of sense, and I think we're very lucky in our downtown. The facades and the look and feel of the downtown all complements each other. So it's not always like that in every part of town or every town. So excellent. All right, well, that was just an update. We don't need to vote on anything for that.
Correct. Yeah. So the contracts we are already in place because these are the Sursage folks we use for streetscape work. So they're just going to get right at it.
All right, then that's great. We'll move right on to the contract award for Chadwick Barras. Also with the Department of Public Works, Holder Model C270 sidewalk tractor and related accessories. David, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This is a contract to replace our existing sidewalk tractor. It's a 2005 model. We're going to go with a new model. It's important. We use this for clearing sidewalks and for snow and ice. And we also use it in the summer for flail mowing our roadsides. It's just off the state bid contract with Chadwick Barras for $170,000, $158.
Okay, any questions? Nope. Okay.
Question.
Fine.
So we got 16 years out of the last machine. Is that typical lifespan?
No, I would typically say that's a 12-year lifespan is what we should be shooting for. We probably put way too much money into the last machine because it passed its useful life. I don't want to keep a machine that long if we don't have to. Unfortunately, with our fleet, we've been funding about half of our needs. We know we have fiscal constraints in town, but ideally this machine would last between 10 and 12 years before it's replaced.
Okay. And this was obviously this was a planned capital expenditure, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Great.
Jen?
You say flare mowing, and if so, what is that? I just out of curiosity don't know what that is.
So a flail mower is just a wide mower, either a boom flail or a front flail. So this is basically just like a mower deck that gets attached to the front of the machine that would go down roadsides basically without curbing. We have about 260 roadside miles, and all that grass and vegetation grows up where we don't have homeowners maintaining their lawns. We have to go in and maintain that. So this would be one of the units we'd use for that roadside mowing.
Great, thank you. So this gets a lot of use then, huh?
Yes. Yep.
That's a good question. All right. If somebody would like to make a motion to award the contract to Chadwick Barras for the Holder Model C270 sidewalk tractor and related accessories in the amount of $170,158.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
Barger and Lamb?
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Evans, yes.
Stacy, yes.
And full Janetti, yes. Great, thank you. Okay, next up is the discussion and
Thanks,
vote
Dave.
on the.
Have a good night,
Bye,
Dave.
David. The vote for the Blanche A. Ames Elementary School with Brake Builders Corp. For the Easton Early Elementary School project, change order number 1. We have a memo in our packet, and Connor, if you want to guide us through that.
Sure. So as the board will recall, at a recent meeting, you voted to establish procedures and membership to what's called the Technical Review Committee of the School Planning Committee, which is basically a group of school planning committee members and staff experts to look at requested change orders in the field as the school is built, with our architects from Perkins Eastman and the owner's project manager. PMA brings forward items that are in various stages of consideration, and only if the architect and PMA recommend that something be funded as necessary for the project to advance, do we authorize it. And then we, over time, kind of bundle these changes, because some of them are quite small in the scheme of the $70+ million budget, and bring them to the board as you are the project owner. So this is the first one of those. It's change order number 1. This is a group of 9-ish changes that sum to just over $53,000. One of the things, based on feedback from the board and questions about, making sure that we are being very transparent with you and the public about the accounting of this. If you look at the memo, each of them, these are going to be standardized, will state in very, very plain English, as of this date, and assuming the execution of this change, X amount of time will have elapsed on a project, Y amount of your contingency will have been spent, and Z amount of total possible maximum contingency spending remains. So if you look at your memo here, as of July 16th, and assuming execution of this, we're at 16.4% of the total project time has already passed. You will still be at below 1% of the owner's construction contingency being spent, even if you authorize this. And the maximum exposure at that date is 7.6%. So, generally, if your actual spent or your total potential exposure remains below the duration of time passed, you're in relatively decent shape. And in this case, we're obviously well below that. The next page includes the nitty-gritty of what these particular changes were. And I believe we have representation from the OPM here if there's any really specific questions about the change orders.
Does it make sense to just have somebody walk through and tell us what these are? Rather than, I'm looking at it and I don't know what structured steel revisions, what that means.
Curious about hung lintels.
We certainly, we can. Walter is here and can quickly do that, I believe. Hi, Walter.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Hi, Walter.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Craig, I heard your first part of the question. I didn't hear the end of it as I was getting transferred in. So if you want to.
I just was curious if you could explain each one of these, because I don't know what, structural steel revisions are, And I think Jamie had a question about something else. So it'd be helpful if you could walk through it for us.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So I'll just run through the list. PCO2. So during the initial part of construction, one of the largest tasks that we go through is the structural steel detailing. So the structural steel manufacturer will probably go through 50 to 75 questions with the architect. They may change some beam sizes, increase beam sizes, decrease beam sizes, just based on what they see in the drawings. So the engineer starts with a drawing set and they really take it into the load calculations. So that first PCO initial exposure was about $6,400. It was negotiated down to about $5,600, $5,700. But that was for some additional size beams, a couple beams that may have been missed on the drawings. So items that were not purchased in the original bid, but are necessary to complete the project. So that was number 2. Number 3 was a pricing based on the non-need for the ductless split and condensate pumps for a smaller size. So that was a credit for a smaller size, about $2,800. So that actually reduced the number. Number 4, elevator, hoistway, roof deck attachments, storefront head blocking additions, HSS lintels, like you were asking, along the T.5. T.5 is a location on the drawings, a grid line, and storefront head blocking. So these are a few more structural steel details that were clarified further that weren't included in the drawings, or they needed to be upsized in order to meet what was going on in the project. So that was about $5,000, which began at about $12,500. Number 6 was foundation adjustments and sanitary invert changes. This is the largest portion of this one. This was due to existing conditions not known in the field. So a few structures that we were tying into when the team actually got there, the inverts were not at the elevations that the drawings that we had told. So there were an additional run needed from one of them, and then some adjustments on manholes on the site, and then some even further additions of a reduction of 2 sanitary invert pipes going into 1, but an upsize from there and a structural calculation. So it was really the longer run to get out to the manhole that we were able to meet the actual invert height needed. Number 7 was a change in the force main from 3-inch to 4-inch per 2 of the drawings. That was, I believe, a requirement of DEP, which we're going to be talking about a little further after this. Number 8 was, again, an added hung lintel detail. So a lintel, sorry, I didn't explain that in the original one. That is a metal beam that goes across a door in a masonry opening. So it holds up the masonry in that location. So those were not included, or that one was not included at that location at room B221. So that would be for the mason to work around that and the structural steel to be installed, manufactured, delivered. Number 9 was a credit. We have had a few of these on the job. Proposed changes in material due to COVID restrictions, or not really restrictions, but material shortages. So this was one of them. And this was a change from stainless steel hardware at the canopies to to galvanized steel with a powder coated finish. So we have a little bit more options as opposed to just a stainless steel. We can get a powder coat with a color on it that will be able to be a little bit more pleasing to everyone's eye. It's under the canopy, so it's not to everyone's eye, but anyone who's under there. That was about $10,000, that was a $10,000 credit. The next item, again, was in regards to actually a manufacturer facility shutdown, and the production of that 0.72 mil, which is the thickness of the membrane of the roof, being not available. They stopped making that run of that material. What was proposed by our roofing subcontractor was actually pretty much a huge benefit to the town of Easton. So the warranty was increased from 30 years, 15 to 30 years, and the thickness of the mill of the roof was actually increased from 0.72 to 0.8. So we had a kind of a la carte menu of options to select from there, but the two that were recommended were to change the mill and be able to get that 30-year warranty for $16,281, which for 15 years is quite the upgrade. And then the last PCO on here is actually a $0 PCO requiring approval for a drawdown of a unit price within the contract. We track these so that we have an authorization for them, but they're actually built within the contract. PMA has verified the work that's taken place. And that unit price is for unsuitable material on the site and replacement with acceptable material. So this was under one of the underground infiltration structures. So in order for it to drain properly, we needed to over excavate, dig down, take out the junk material, replace with good stone, and then put the system back on top of that. So that was a quick rundown of those 9 items. I'm happy to expand if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Yeah, very thorough. Thank you, Walter.
I do have a quick question. I'm sorry. So for the last one, the overdig, I'm looking at what's in the packet, and it looks like, you know, they asked for 57,000, and 57,000 hasn't been approved.
Yep.
So is that, we're going to see that at a later meeting?
Nope. That PCO it will be billed in the contract, so it won't need approval to be drawn out of owner's contingency. So the number that you're seeing there, that 57,511.21, will be billed within the contract because it exists in the contract. On the other end, if this were to never have happened, at the end of the project, they would have been giving you a credit for that full unit price.
Okay.
So there are some I don't want to call them safeties. We call them unit prices built into the contract. If they don't ever get expended, they do get turned back at the end of the project. I believe we have 4 of them within the contract.
So did they attempt to get a change order and then you guys refused it?
On this one, it's been kind of a back and forth.
Okay. I don't need to get into the weeds. I've been where you're sitting. I totally get it. Now, where I was going with this was, I see a lot of credits here, and it tells me that you guys are really paying attention. So it looks great to me. I do have a question for Connor though, when everybody's done.
Jamie or Jen, do you have any questions?
No, that was very thorough. Thank you.
Go ahead with your question, Mark.
Okay. So Connor, you mentioned that this still keeps us below 1% of the project contingency. What are we carrying for a contingency right now?
Oh man,
You set yourself up for that one.
How many phone of friends do I get?
I got it, Connor.
I know you do.
The exact number for the owner's hard cost construction contingency is $3,744,329. But that does not include the bid savings that was appropriated into. So we only track against that $3.7 million. So that's 1% of the 3.7. But there were about $10 million in bid savings as well.
Okay. I don't ask to put anyone in the hot seat. Obviously, I fully support all of this. It's just something I like to know because we're going to be having these conversations more. So
absolutely.
So thank you.
Okay, so let me see where I am on this. We do need to vote to, oops, I just lost my place here. We do need to vote to accept change order number 1.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
Back to you, Craig. That's Barger and Lamb.
Yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Casey, yes.
And full Janetti, yes. Terrific. And the next one is a discussion and vote for the Blanche A. Ames Elementary School Perkins Eastman Designer Contract Amendment number 5.
Sure. So this is similar, but not exactly the same as what we just did. So the prior contract was dealing with a GC contract for the construction. This is dealing with an amendment to the existing designer contract, and it's in response to disparity between as-built and what the DEP's permit file had for the wastewater treatment on site. So this is extra design work in the amount of $60,500 that is effectively being required by the DEP in order to make sure that those things match. This comes out of a different bucket of contingency. The existing designer contract has $450,000, a $450,000 placeholder for unanticipated additional design costs such as this. So there's a memo detailing some of that in your packet, and of course, Walter is here for the nitty gritty.
Any questions on this?
Maybe if Walter, could you just sort of give us an overview of what DEP is expecting us to do and why?
Yep. So as Connor stated, the reason why we actually worked for about 7 or 8 months trying to get this settled with them, and they came back and required it, as Connor said. But the reason is that a couple of the documents that they have for their as-built don't match what was actually in the field for the wastewater treatment plant. What they're requiring is a load test and the associated reporting witness, basically the engineering stamp of this to prove that that system can hold what we know it can hold based on its design calcs. But because of the discrepancy, they're requiring that test to take place and for all of that documentation to be submitted with them, and then create the file that'll be matching.
And that is because, Walter, it's a higher number of gallons per day than was in the 1996 or whatever.
It's because we are bringing additional. But it's also because whatever the DEP had on file didn't align with the design that was implemented into the field. So the town, more or less, any type of work, whether it was the school or not, the DEP was going to end up finding this variance between the two documents, the as-built condition and what was filed. So really, we just happened to be the guinea pig, I guess, that kind of got noticed because we are adding, but they do have a smaller design flow, I believe, on their end than what was actually in the field. So they have it as smaller, and that's why they're requiring it to be completed.
Thank you, Walter.
Yep.
This one seems like very necessary. I would not want to be in this position at the end of this project or down the line. So, silver lining could be a blessing in disguise. So, so this cost, it's for the load testing, the documentation, the resubmitting to DEP and getting everything lined up. And then once that's done, we're done. Now, my fear is, what if it doesn't meet? What if the load test doesn't pass muster?
So here's the good news. This load test could actually end up saving the project money, because what we did to take some safety steps was to include additional chambers and additional leaching within the construction cost of the general contractor. So if we are required to add some additional leaching area, we have that carried. If this design test shows us that we're at where we're at, we don't need to put anything in, we have a credit forthcoming on the other end. So we have the safety built in there already.
Outstanding.
Any other questions? Okay, then I would take a motion to accept Perkins Eastman Designer Contract Amendment number 5.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
Barger, Lamb?
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Casey, yes.
And full Janetti, yes. Great. Thank you for being here, Walter, and thanks for all the great work that PMA is doing on this project.
Of course, thank you very much.
Night, Walter.
Thank you, Walter.
Bye.
Okay, getting to towards the end of the agenda here. Next is the town administrator update for polyfluoroalkyl substances, otherwise known as PFAS, and mitigation planning.
Sure.
Barry, you want to give us this update?
Sure. So since town meeting appropriated or approved the capital funds associated with advancing our PFAS mitigation strategies here in Easton, I just wanted to give a brief update on where we're at. So as the board knows, shortly after town meeting, the water division rolled out a small treated water distribution vending unit at a water division on Bay Road for anyone who lives in Easton who may be in a sensitive subgroup or have other health concerns to get free filtered water while we get to work with design and eventually construction of our water treatment facilities. So at your next meeting, actually, August 9th, you will have a engineering contract amendment. So as you may recall, we executed a PFAS preparedness study contract with environmental partners last year. We're moving that forward to an amendment that will add permitting, final design, bidding, contract administration, resident engineering services, quite similar to the contract I believe you voted for the Red Mill Road plant engineering services at your last meeting. So that'll be coming 2 weeks from now, and that will get us rolling towards final design and bidding this fall, with construction starting as soon as we can get those bids out, received, and a contract awarded. So that's the update on where we are with the immediate term mitigation and what will be coming for design and eventual construction services. And I just wanted to give a brief update on some of the statewide work. So I'm a member on the state's PFAS Interagency Task Force. I should have linked to it in the TA notes, but if you just Google PFAS, Massachusetts PFAS Interagency Task Force, it'll pull up their website. So this committee, state committee, has a website that has all the testimony and documents that have been provided so far. We've had 4 hearings since the summer began, and have a handful more in August and September before the hearings conclude. So this, a little bit of background, this committee's responsibility, it was established by state legislation. It's chaired by Representative Hogan and Senator Sear. Its job is to look at PFAS contamination more globally in the Commonwealth. Right now, obviously, on our level, there's a tremendous amount of focus on drinking water because the Commonwealth through the DEP can regulate drinking PFAS in drinking water. But there's a ton of knowledge and information and resource gaps, and in my opinion, a lot of regulatory gaps where you have a kind of confusing dynamic right now in the Commonwealth where the drinking water program is regulating PFAS as if it's an emergency, warranting hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, in water district and municipal infrastructure investments to treat the end product, being water, but it's perfectly legal to manufacture and sell PFAS in any number of consumer products that we all use every day. So this interagency task force is meant to start to work on that and make recommendations by the end of this calendar year to the state legislature on getting our arms around as a Commonwealth more comprehensively what we need to do about these substances. So that task force has held 4 hearings. Last week, it held a hearing devoted to receiving testimony from municipal governments on what PFAS mitigation looks like down on our level. I was one of, I think, a half dozen or more municipal officials able to testify. It was a really good meeting to hear a lot of different perspectives. As we know, Easton is not alone. Although our circumstances are kind of unique with testing in advance of the MCL, there are other places that had airport facilities. There are some communities that have significant PFAS contamination and are entirely on private well water for individuals. So there's a lot of different nuances to how we all as residents of the Commonwealth are going to have to be dealing with this. So those meetings are public. I believe videos of all of them are available on that state website. They are. And its next meeting is next Tuesday. The topic of that meeting is what the state and federal government is currently doing to deal with PFAS. And then it will have 2 more meetings in September, which is who's responsible for the contamination and remediation. And then September 21st, finally, how can Massachusetts address PFAS? So that was the 20th. On the 21st, I was able to give a presentation for the Massachusetts Municipal Association for many of our colleagues who are finding themselves in a similar situation. Nearly 60 public water suppliers so far, now that mandatory PFAS testing has gone into effect as of this calendar year. Under the DEP's regs, nearly 60 public water suppliers have tested over the MCL, many more right near it. And so there's a lot of folks who are getting up to speed on this now. So lots happening locally and in the state there, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about what we're doing here.
Greg?
So Connor, the hope is that one, the feds will acknowledge the extent of this issue and step up with some funding. And secondly, that there may be some, shall we say, a court action versus the companies that produce PFAS, or is that?
Well, so I can't speak for the entire task force. Speaking from my kind of limited lens on this in my professional role, no, I don't think any of us are necessarily holding our breath that the federal government's going to step in and immediately rectify this. They have been extraordinarily slow, in my opinion, on this issue. The US EPA is still talking about PFOA and PFOS, which that's 2 out of thousands of these different types of chemicals. So by the time, there does seem to be the EPA under this administration does seem to be taking this more seriously. There may be a federal drinking water standard at some point. But we're all having to deal with state standards right now. And because of the absence of the federal government establishing that drinking water standard, you have a dynamic now where you have different drinking water standards in different states. Some states have none. Massachusetts has PFAS 6. Other states have PFAS 20, which is different combinations. So there's not a lot of uniformity in the response. And some of that's not the fault of regulators. This is the way that these chemical compounds work, is that there are so many of them that right now there's this kind of regulatory whack-a-mole situation where so Massachusetts has PFAS 6, but there may be many, many, many other PFAS that are not currently regulated that might be very substantially similar, but haven't been on the market for long enough for folks to have enough longitudinal data to make a conclusive assessment on its health impacts. One of the most foundational problems is just to find or challenges is just to define the problem. When we say PFAS, what do we actually mean? Do we mean, the 2 legacy ones, PFOA and PFOS? Do we mean the Massachusetts PFAS 6? Do we mean any chemicals that are substantially similar to PFAS? And if so, who makes that call? Probably someone who's much smarter than me and has formal training in chemistry. So no, I don't think anyone is expecting the federal government to resolve the situation. There may be lots, depending on what happens. There's on again, off again talks about infrastructure bills, right, from the federal government, and that could create funding sources that could be used. But those are more general. I don't know if it's, you see some of the president's proposals focus on very specific things such as like lead pipes. I haven't yet seen something as specific on the federal level, not to say that it's not there, targeting PFAS remediation. But this is going to be, in Massachusetts alone, some of the numbers municipal officials were presenting, from your own experience in Easton, we're nearing 10 million for our costs. There are communities spending $25 million on their local treatment. You're looking at hundreds of millions or billions in local costs just in Massachusetts. You scale that up nationally, and it's going to be an extraordinary financial burden. As far as the second part of that question, as you know, the town of Easton already signed on to a multi-district litigation lawsuit against 3M, DuPont, and a variety of other PFAS manufacturers. So that's that's something we have done, but that may come up for the interagency task force, just based on their hearing topic on September 7th of who is responsible for contamination and remediation. But again, I can't speak for any of the members on that as far as that's concerned, but I know locally we have been relatively aggressive on that front and will continue to be.
Thank you, Connor.
Mark?
Yes, I do have a question, Connor. I think you're just scratching the surface. I think we're in agreement on that. That this incredibly needed task force is just scratching the surface of what PFAS has done to just about every state in the country. Does this task force, its sole focus, is it PFAS in the water, or does it extend beyond that into like the manufacturing of PFAS and its disposal? And I asked that question because, and then I have another question as well. I asked that question because I think so long as PFAS is manufactured, it will find its way into the ground, which will find its way into our drinking water, unless there is like, it's not manufactured as much, or the disposal it's different. I mean, it's not just about solving the groundwater and drinking water. It's so much bigger than that. And I'm curious how this task force, how big are their arms? Like how much are they tackling here? I know, because it's an endless topic. And my other question is, how do you feel that Massachusetts is doing in comparison to other states?
Okay, on the first one, thankfully the answer to your question is yes. The task force's lens is much broader than what we've seen so far, and that's by design. And I think, again, I can't speak for the authors of the legislation, but the saying, when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Regulatory agencies only have the ability to deal with problems with the toolkits they are provided by statute. And so it's not, it is a true statement to say that right now a ton of the focus is on water, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there are not folks in the DEP or DPH who would look at this and say, we really need to be more aggressive from a different perspective or approach. But if they don't have that, if they're not charged with doing so, then they can't. There's, I have a list in front of me of the purpose of the PFAS Interagency Task Force. I believe it's on their website. I won't read every bullet, but one of the key purposes is identify the sources of PFAS contamination and exposure pathways that pose the greatest risk to public health and environment. They're looking at that from a much broader perspective than just water. So that's, I think, a good thing. As far as how does Massachusetts stack up, I'm not knowledgeable enough about the specific efforts of every other state, although I do know that Massachusetts DEP's drinking water standard is one of the more strict ones in America. I believe the state of Maine actually just made news, I believe internationally, in the past 4 weeks for passing state legislation to comprehensively start regulating and prohibiting, in many cases, the manufacture and use and sale of PFAS. So Massachusetts it is certainly one of the leaders on the state level, but I'm not qualified to kind of rank us. But the committee's work is very important. The members have been really engaged. And I think the co-chairs have set a really good path so far. But it is certainly an ongoing topic of conversation with the task force that we can't, and the presenters they've brought in, really bright, professors, epidemiologists, medical experts, talking about the exact point that you've just made. One of the presentations that's probably on their website had a great graphic showing like the enormous kind of cornucopia, unfortunately, of sources, food packaging. The Guardian was reporting on how common PFAS is in makeup products, stain resistant things, water resistant. So it is pretty overwhelming. So the task force is looking at it from that perspective, and I know some state bodies like Maine have started approaching it from a kind of class perspective of PFAS as a class of chemicals.
That's great, because the idea of the whack-a-mole metaphor where you attack one, then another one, there's literally tens of thousands of different strains of PFAS here. It is completely insane to me to attack one. That's ridiculous. That's a total waste of time. So I like the idea that they're looking at it as a group in its entirety.
Jamie, any questions?
I just want to say I was attended the webinar on PFAS and MMA, and Connor did a great job presenting, but then also helping answer some of the questions that were presented to the panel. So thank you again for taking the leadership on it. And Mark, you bring up a really good point, which I think is the toughest one to digest, which is, you patent another product that is basically mirrors any one, chemical compound that's similar to the 2 or 3 that we might look at. So it's going to be very difficult. I think it's an eye opener here. I think it's education, it's communication. This task force is going to go a long ways at educating this community, which will then, just like Easton has done, start here, then it spreads to the state, then hopefully it spreads to other states and keeps going, because we've got a lot of work to do here as a human species. So thanks.
Jen?
Just echo that as well. We're, as a country, the United States is very behind the ball when it comes to how we think about chemicals of concern and how we have this kind of use it first and see what happens approach to chemicals. It's very bad for our health, for the environment and whatnot. I think there's a lot of panic around PFAS, and obviously it's a very important and critical issue that needs resolution. But like climate change, people often panic and then don't know what to do. And it's just important to remind folks that you can do things to start to mitigate or minimize your impacts at home. Things like the pots and pans you use, consider not using Teflon because that's a source of PFAS. If your couch, when you buy a couch next time, make sure you're buying something that's not coated in the Scotchgard or same resistant material, same with your rugs. These are all big sources of that in your home. So you're getting a certain percentage from your drinking water and thermal exposure, but you're also getting it from dust and other, sources throughout the world. So you can start minimizing that in your own space and kind of start to feel a little bit better. And that's, I think, an important thing that we can all do to try to help. But the biggest thing, of course, is going to be, pressure to these companies to not produce these chemicals that are proven to be problematic.
Good point. And I think that, Mark, one of the things that you mentioned is once you have all this filtration equipment, where is this going to be disposed? Like, that's something that nobody's really talking about either. And it's concerning, even on our hazardous waste day, people bringing back their used filters. You're not supposed to throw your filters in the regular trash either, but there's no instructions on, well, if you don't do that, what do you do? So they have to resolve that as well. Connor, I think you're pretty humble when you talk about your role on that committee. You're the only municipal person in the state, and you were nominated by the MMA, and that just shows the confidence they had in your knowledge and skills to be on that. So we really appreciate you serving and being the voice of the municipalities across the state. I would just add, if anybody watches the movie Dark Waters, you'll be really shocked at what these companies have been able to get away with. And they've known for years the extent of the damage of this. And all they did is just play that cup shuffling game where, we'll agree to get rid of these chemicals, and then they replace them with something that's the exact same thing, but they call it something different. So they're making it very complicated and very difficult to really do something about it in that way. And I think looking at it as a class is probably a great step forward with that. So thank you very much, Connor, for the update. It's very informative, and I'm glad that Easton is really trying to stay ahead of the curve on this. So, all right, on to our next item is COVID updates, Connor.
Sure. So it's been about a month or 6 weeks since we've done a COVID update. thankfully, in some regards, but I just wanted to do a quick download of everyone of where the community stands. Thankfully, the days of EMA having meetings 7 days a week are over and hopefully not coming back, but we'll talk a little about that later. But we do stay in touch on a weekly basis. Trends starting in the big picture in the US, moving down to the state and then Easton. Unfortunately, as many of you have probably heard in the news, the rolling average of cases in the United States is moving back up. Right now, it's at about 52,000 cases per day, which is not the direction that we want to see. Although, thankfully, at least for now, the daily deaths have not kicked up as quickly. This is a highly regional situation, but as you'll see here, even if it's regional, it's not the direction we want to see. The rolling 7-day average of COVID cases in America is up 158% over the last 14 days. Hospitalizations are back near 30,000 in the country. That is up from just shy of 17,000 last time we had a discussion about this in June. Here is from COVID Act Now. This is for relative risk level in each of the states. It's based on a variety of metrics, including the daily new cases, infection rate, and test positive rate in each communities. Again, here's when we spoke about this 6 weeks ago. No state was in the red, and now particularly in the South, as is being quite widely covered due to the comparatively low vaccine rates and the infectiousness of the Delta variant. Some of those states are really getting hit pretty hard. So the positive news is that Massachusetts, although our cases have ticked up a bit since the low, are still comparatively, particularly compared to some of our sister states, quite low. The 14-day average test positive rate is still below 1% in Massachusetts. So the state got down to as few as 60 cases per day towards the end of June and July. That's risen up to, I believe, a rolling average of a few hundred a day. Again, the good news is that the hospitalization rate in Massachusetts still remains extraordinarily low compared to where we were. So right now there's about 114 residents of the Commonwealth in the hospital. That's down from 2,200 in the winter surge this January and down from about 4,400 last spring. Shortly before our last update on this, most COVID restrictions in Massachusetts were relaxed. Masks are still required in a handful of particular places, such as in medical facilities, public transit, and the CDC and the DPH continues to recommend that if you're not vaccinated, you should still have a mask on if you are indoors and you can't socially distance. So in Easton, we're at a cumulative about 2,200 cases. 67 residents have lost their life to COVID. Thankfully, although nationally we're seeing the case rate increase and even in the Commonwealth to a much less severe degree, cases have really been relatively marginal in Easton since June. This is a representation, if you remember, the Commonwealth rolled out a basically stoplight color coding system, green being relatively low risk, yellow being medium, red being high, and gray is the kind of below the low risk. So we've been in gray since the end of May, which is great. This is our actually weekly new caseload. So over the winter, we had some weeks where we were having more than 130 confirmed cases every single week, many hundreds in the span of 1 month. We've had a few weeks since June with 0 confirmed cases of COVID in all of Easton, which is remarkable. Our test positive rate remains below the state average, so below 0.8, which is great. So here are some of those raw numbers. Weekly cases, 6, 0, 7, 6, 0, 6. Again, we were looking at, sorry, those are biweekly case numbers. We were looking at biweekly case numbers nearing 300 every 2 weeks in the winter. So to have some periods of time with 0 is really remarkable. Test positive rate at 0.57% is still good. This brings us to the kind of last section of the update, which is, continued reminder to holdouts who are not yet vaccinated. They need to get on board. The statistic that really matters is 99% of Americans in the hospital and 99% of those dying from COVID are unvaccinated. That's not an accident. It's also not an accident that the states with the lower vaccine uptake rates, everyone's getting hit really hard by the Delta variant. Before getting into our most recent vaccine work, municipal services, our administrative offices are open regular hours, 5 days a week. Folks can still take advantage of contactless service. If they're not vaccinated, they should have a mask on when they come to our buildings. And our board meetings are obviously still on Zoom. Staff is working with ECAT, looking at a variety of hybrid options to explore the potential moving forward for limited board meetings that have some in-person components as well. So the vaccine update. Vaccine is approved for anyone 12 and up. Looking at the United States, roughly 57% of the population of the United States has received at least one dose. In Massachusetts, we're much higher. We're at 72.1%, looking at about 64% of Massachusetts fully vaccinated. Easton's vaccine data. So there's a lot of different variables here. I think what's noteworthy is that for everyone 30 and up, your fully vaccinated rate per capita is 78 plus percent, 78, 83, 85, 85% fully vaccinated coverage. What's really interesting to look at is, so the first row you see there, age group 12 to 15, those kids obviously have had the least amount of time where they've been eligible for the vaccine. The emergency use for that came through, I believe, in May, yet they are on a per capita basis more vaccinated than 16 to 30-year-olds in Easton who've had access to this since December. Obviously that group, 16 to 29, is the only age group in Easton, according to DPH data, that less than half are fully vaccinated. We've been trying to get creative with vaccine clinics. Obviously, vaccines are widely available at this point. Almost any pharmacy can connect people up with it. We tried to do a job fair and vaccine clinic, and we could not get sufficient interest from registrants to get that off the ground. Although last week we were able to host a back-to-school vaccine clinic with the Easton Public Schools and Fire Department, which was a good event at the schools, which was great. Try and get advantage and create an opportunity there for folks who want kids to be able to get ready prior to the fall. So we've administered just shy of 1,500 doses of vaccine total. We are currently doing that through partnerships with Rite Aid. We'll continue to work with the fire department and the Department of Health and Community Services to see what opportunity we have, provided we can get sufficient interest from the public to continue to offer more boutique and tailored vaccine clinics to keep trying to make it creative and try and help a few more of those undecideds over the hurdle. So that's what I have on COVID. Happy to take any questions from the board.
Greg, any questions?
No, I just want to reiterate something that Connor said. That I was listening to Anthony Fauci the other day talk about the fact that north of 99% of the people in hospitals and people who have died from the Delta variant are non-vaccinated individuals. That's extraordinary.
Mark?
No comment.
Jamie?
No, thank you, Connor.
Jen?
Oh, just to add to what Craig just said, actually, they're also saying the biggest uptick is in that 20 to 30-year-old age group in terms of who's being hospitalized and who they're seeing having complications. So I think that just speaks volumes for the benefits of getting vaccinated and the resources we have. So thank you, Connor, for what you and all of the town departments have done to make that accessible and to keep things moving in the right direction for our community.
And good luck to the people in Easton, and hopefully somebody here wins one of those $1 million awards that we'll find out about on Thursday. So if we win, we still have to serve. All right, great. Thank you so much, Connor. I'm going to do the general minutes first. We have general minutes dated July 13th, 2021. If everybody's had a chance to read those, and if somebody would like to make a motion to accept.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
Barger, Lamb,
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Stacy, yes.
and full Janetti, yes. Connor, any any town administrator notes?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, Craig, any select board notes?
Nothing at this point. Thank you.
Mark?
The only note is this Thursday at 6 o'clock, there's going to be an economic development Easton Chamber event at Leandro's Where's Chris event. So if you're in the area, want to talk about economic development, stop in.
Thanks. Jamie?
No, thank you.
Jen?
No, thank you.
And I guess I'll just make one comment. I serve on the Commission for Disabilities, and there's on our social media today, it talks about today is the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there's a nice little description of what that means, how far it's come. And I just want to thank that committee for the work that they do to really care for the people in the town. And really thoughtfully try to find ways to improve accessibility. It's really important to those who need that. So thank you to the Commission on Disabilities Board. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
Barger, Lamb,
Barger, yes.
Lamb, yes.
Stebbins, yes.
Stacy, yes.
and full Janetti, yes. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you in a
Thank
couple
you.
weeks.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.